My phone has not stopped ringing. I'm late this year producing because we ran out last year. So everyone wants it. They want more.
What's the sap doing? How come they're sapping the maple trees this time of year? Our biggest challenge right now has got to be climate change.
The wind and heavy rain, for example, if we have a heavy rains constantly coming in actually, the soil is so flooded basically, the roots will not be able to breathe.
We couldn't tap in January this year because there was no temperatures below zero. That's unheard of. I mean, that's just unheard of.
Hello, I'm Tom Murphy. Welcome to Land and Sea. Maple syrup is a Canadian tradition, a sweet maritime delight. But maple syrup farmers are struggling with the impact of climate change. Many Nova Scotia producers are keeping the taps flowing, though, with strategies, innovations, and hard work.
Everything's good?
Here we are at a sugar maple stand in Lake Paul, a small community near Nova Scotia's Annapolis Valley. It's the start of the maple syrup season. Anna Hutchinson and her partner Chris of Hutchinson Acres have been at this for more than 16 years.
Maple syrup comes from trees. It comes in as sap, maple sap.
When that sun comes out like it is right now, that sun, if you're watching your releasers, you'll see the sap increase within a matter of minutes after that sun comes out.
We tap each tree that is of the right size, and then it comes into these headers. We have 400 miles of tubing in our sugar bush. Some of it's gravity fed, some of it we vacuum pump, and it all goes back down to the evaporator building. It has to be a maple tree. So maple tree is the only tree that can produce maple sap, but we have red maple, we have sugar maple, we have rock maple. We're on a virgin forest. So for us, some of these trees are hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they're still producing because that's what they want to do. That's their life.
The Hutchinsons are the largest producers of organic maple syrup in the province.
So anyway, we'll get these moved out when the road starts to thaw out a little bit.
Anna and Chris love farming and the work that goes into maple syrup. They share this passion on their YouTube channel.
Hi, I'm Chris.
And I'm Anna.
We're the Hutchinsons.
We own Hutchinson Maple Products in Lake Paul, Nova Scotia.
Their children have grown, and now their life revolves around their land.
Still warm.
Some of them are, yeah.
My husband and I honestly have worked really hard to get to where we are today. We spent 21 years in a tractor trailer together to build this, and every time we walk through these woods, every time we come here, it just puts a smile on our face because we love this so much.
Oh my goodness gracious. What are you doing? What? You can't have that stick. Are you going to get a stick too?
Reducing sap to make syrup has come a long way since the bucket and outdoor boiler. This is the modern version of production.
These are the releasers. This is where the sap comes in from the sugar bush. It gets through these here into the piping, and I'll show you where it goes next. So then the sap goes into these 5,000 gallon tanks, and then we go to the reverse osmosis. So the reverse osmosis process removes the majority of the water from the sap. When it goes from the sap to at 18%, it goes into the evaporator. From the evaporator, it takes it to 66% bricks, which is the sugar content, which qualifies it as maple syrup. From the evaporator, goes through the filter press. Then we go into the barrel. This is where it is finished product, and it goes up to the bottling room to be bottled into the Hutchinson's maple products.
The Hutchinsons have grown their operation, and they now export to Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and more. Producing syrup is big business, but it can be precarious, and climate change is creating even more challenges.
One of the first things that we do in the season in November and December is we make sure that any trees that have fallen down our lines are cleaned up. So then the 1st of January comes, and that's time to start the season again. Any repairs done to these lines, new wires, anything like that, that's the time the maintenance gets done. And so we will be tapping through the month of January, and then February, March, and April are the months that usually most of your collection is done. Usually our syrup production is done at this part of the year by the May 1st. Then after that we have a month that we do cleanup, and that is sanitizing all the tubing, fixing any repairs. We couldn't tap in January this year because there was no temperatures below zero. It was above zero almost every day. And even when it was below zero, we'd only get a day or two of -2 or -3. That's unheard of. I mean, that's just unheard of.
Sap flows with cool nights and warm days, so temperature changes have an impact, and so do storms.
The ice storm of 2022 was pretty dramatic for us here at Hutchinson's. We lost a lot of trees. We had a lot of damage. We ended up having to go in and fix everything that we had, and the season had just started. And we had a slow production year because of it. And as you look through the woods, you'll still see a lot of damaged trees, a lot of half trees where for some reason, it took the tops of the trees off. And yeah, it takes a lot to fix that. And every time we get a windstorm, it happens again. It just keeps happening.
Recently retired Professor Rajasekaran Laddha spent 25 years studying environmental stress and the physiology of maple trees and other plants in Nova Scotia.
Now, generally, we used to have the season starting in May 15th or 16th, going up to April 15th or 16th or 17th, sometime late into April. But now, we started seeing it in sometime in February, basically, right? Or early March. And then the seasons become shorter as well, as we know. Climate change has a role to play, and we do have scientific evidence to prove that. The human activity is directly correlated with the kinds of temperature raises over the past 35 years.
All of this comes at a time when the world demand for maple syrup is on the rise, and so is the price. Producers can't make enough. It takes 40 liters of sap to make 1 liter of syrup, and many wonder if this industry is truly sustainable.
Our product is sold out long before the year ends and has been for the last few years. We cannot produce enough syrup to meet our demand. We produce, on a good year, 250,000 pounds plus.
Demand is increasing every single year. The hard part for us is production isn't increasing.
Quebec produces most of Canada's maple syrup by far, followed by New Brunswick, Ontario, and then Nova Scotia. Still, more than 50,000 gallons or 200,000 liters of maple syrup are produced in Nova Scotia each year.
Basically, my phone has not stopped ringing. I'm late this year producing because we ran out last year. So everyone wants it. They want more. And at some point, you may have to start saying, sorry, I can't take on new customers because I might not have enough supply to supply the customers that I currently have.
But the trees that make this coveted sweetener aren't producing as much sap as they used to.
That we have seen in terms of a reduction in maple, it's really plummeted. It's gone down by 40% overall in terms of productivity. Number of taps have increased over the period of time from 1970s, and now we started with 75,000 taps in 1970s to close to about 400,000 taps in Nova Scotia. But the average yield, the sap yield has declined actually. It was somewhere around 0.45 liters per tap. Now we have gone down to about 0.33 liters per tap. So there is a decline.
After the break, coping with the aftermath of one of the most powerful and destructive storms in Canadian history. In the fall of 2022, post-tropical storm Fiona hit Canada's east coast. It caused devastation on either side of the Gulf of St. Lawrence in Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, displacing homes and washing out roads. Hurricane-strength winds leveled hundreds of thousands of trees, including many of the maples relied on for maple syrup.
Good afternoon, folks. Lovely to see another 4-H group here today.
Darren Noble operates Creekside Farm Maple in Pictou County, one of the parts of Nova Scotia hit hardest by the storm.
This year we were ready to make the jump from 525 to about 750 taps. Fiona changed that for us in a matter of hours, and we lost 90% of those 525 trees, along with about 4 acres that was ready to be put into production. That 500 that we lost, plus the 4 acres that was ready, that's gone for my lifetime and our kids' lifetime as well. So the challenge is going to be how many more hurricanes can we withstand, because a maple tree that's planted today isn't going to be ready to be tapped for 80 more years. So other farmers who lose their corn crop or their wheat crop, that's a huge hit for them, but they can replant that and they can have that crop again next year. Maple farmers can't have that. Once our resource is gone, it's gone for a lifetime.
After months of work cleaning up with the help from friends and family, Darren was able to salvage the sugar season.
There's 475 trees on this lower main line coming down the hill here, and there's nothing on the old line right now. That line goes to what the hurricane destroyed. And my proudest moment, I think, has to be when sap started flowing down that pipe 4 weeks ago when we tapped, after everything that it took to get this back together.
Okay, here's an example of a tree that we planted 27 years ago.
Arborist Stan Kuchinoff has been concerned with the impact of the changing environment on trees.
2022, we had Hurricane Fiona, and it did a lot of damage to trees all over Nova Scotia, and particularly sugar maples. I spoke to one of the producers there. He lost 1,000 trees, which is a major blow to their production. One place lost 6,000 trees, which is amazing. The amount of cleanup was just devastating in terms of trying to get rid of the broken trees and cleaning up the tubing and things like that. This past year, we've had forest fires, we've had flooding, windstorms, violent windstorms, and erosion of the soil around the base of the trees. In terms of the warming, it's causing a migration of insects and problem areas that were in the States and now are moving towards us here in Canada.
Professor Rajasekharan Ladda has spent decades studying trees and says climate change can affect maple syrup in multiple ways.
There's not only the temperature that is increasing, the wind and heavy rain. For example, if we have a heavy rains constantly coming in, actually, the soil is so flooded, basically, the roots will not be able to breathe, right? It creates an anoxic conditions, and then the tree death can occur as well, right? It creates a exactly similar physiological condition like a drought. Excess water is no good than, right, no water.
There are many things out of the operator's control, and while predicting the weather has never been easy, it's getting harder. This means tough calls for some operations. Darren's neighbor John McIntyre, another producer in Nova Scotia's Pictou County, gave up his season due to the damage.
The climate change is, certainly changing the maple runs for sure. Looking at the weather, we thought, we probably missed a big run in February, and by the time we get this up and running, it's going to be a lot of work for a little bit of reward. And once again, we were wrong. Mother Nature's farming. I mean, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature, and we made a mistake. We should have put the effort in and did it, but we didn't.
At Creekside Maple, the lines and tubing are in place. Darren is ready to tap the trees for sap.
This brace here was from my grandfather Marsman, from my mom's dad. He gave this to me when he died. And so this is pretty special to me. And then the spile that we're gonna put in the tree, this came from my grandfather Noble, and he gave this to me when I was probably about your age. So we're gonna make a little well in the tree, and then the sap is gonna fill up in there. It's gonna travel in through that hole, and it's gonna run out here and drip off the spout. And guess what the hook's for?
The bucket.
Exactly. Making maple syrup is definitely a lifestyle, and a lot of these operations in Nova Scotia go back several generations. And what we're doing here is we're evaporating, and as fancy as this looks, we're taking that 51 parts sap, boiling away 50 parts water, and what's left is our maple syrup.
Darren doesn't export his product, he sells locally and to people who drop by his sugar camp.
Have you had our maple syrup before?
Yeah,
Yep,
we
have.
we bought it from you before. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, not right off the evaporator.
New product this year is maple butter. That's going really good for us. And we have blocks of maple cream, then 1 liters for 23 and some 2 liters for 42. You guys took a 1 liter glass, I think, last time you were here. Got one of those again?
Yep.
After the break, the future of maple syrup in Nova Scotia. Making maple syrup is both a challenge and a reward. Climate change is disrupting traditional weather patterns and making the work more unpredictable for syrup producers in Nova Scotia like Darren Noble. But they are finding ways to adapt. Chris Hutchinson and his wife Anna run the largest organic maple syrup operation in Nova Scotia. They tap about 30,000 trees on about 350 hectares.
Okay, right now this tree is running very well. As you can see, the sap is flowing out. It's full. The air bubbles, that's all normal. That's a good tight tap. So this is a wet line. This will carry our sap out. Dry line carries the vacuum into the woods. This technology is approximately 25 years old. That's the next level is we're starting to bury our pipe now, and this eliminates a lot of the effects of climate change, damage, trees falling on it, bears chewing it, squirrels chewing it, and just depleting over time. Technology is what's going to drive us. Technology is what's going to offset the climate change. You're not going to change the climate.
It's becoming more of a science than more of a family thing that you always did. So we have to take a hard look at what we're doing and what has been done, and adapt that into the new reality of what things are. And part of that is, like weather stations, for example. You never thought of having your own weather station, but now that's a common thing. And it just gives you another helping hand, another tool in the toolbox, if you will, to adapt and make things work.
The black pipes coming in through the back wall, those are our sap main lines that come down from the sugar woods. As the sap fills up and gets up to about this level, the float is going to trip the mechanism and it's going to dump into the bottom of the tank here. Here it goes.
But if you look into whether you get an increased yield by improvised technology adoption, yes, there is a 52% increase in yield by adopting technology, but it is capital intensive.
For some operators, using new technology also helps reduce the impact on the environment their farms rely on.
All the technology in maple syrup today, reverse osmosis, high vacuum systems, energy efficient evaporators, are all ways that we can use the technology to improve production and cut down on that carbon footprint.
Since we've had buckets, the advancements have been quite surreal. For instance, after buckets, we started replacing our taps to increase our, cleanliness and bacteria and keeping a control so our taps last longer. And then the way we tap with the precision tappers, and then with the vacuums and the advancements we've had in vacuums has just been phenomenal in the last few years. And then the ROs, all of these advancements help us become better and much more cost-effective business to run.
Well, some farmers I talk to are leasing lands from other people to help offset the losses of the trees. With the weather prediction, they're able to get prepared for it and you know, move ahead in terms of what they're doing now is they're getting things ready earlier in advance.
Technology has helped the Hutchinsons as they've expanded, but sometimes Mother Nature still throws a wrench in the plans.
The ice storm that we had last year, it destroyed a lot of trees. But we found that it destroyed poor trees. The blocks that were overcrowded did a lot worse than the blocks that were evenly spaced. So we can mitigate the effects of climate change.
With all of the challenges, some might ask, why not cut down the trees and sell them?
I've read that argument many times, and I'm experiencing that now because I've already got market for my 5 acres that was blown down by Fiona, and I know what that's going to pay me. But in the long term, I could make way more money producing maple syrup than that one-time turnaround every 80 to 100 years of selling perfectly good sugar maples for saw logs.
In Nova Scotia, we're just cutting trees. We need to leave these trees living so that they will produce the right things for our environment.
I will produce a barrel for every acre that I have. That's $3,000 an acre. I'm going to do that every single year. And when I'm doing it, I'm going to make that tree grow better, and I'm going to thin those bad ones out of there, and I'm going to look and say, that's one I want to keep right there.
We just have to do more research and keep trying, but we don't want to stop producing maple syrup in Nova Scotia. That's our whole life.
Climate change definitely is frustrating, and we collectively as a planet, we need to deal with it. And what I do here, I sometimes wonder, what we're doing here at Creekside Farm Maple, is that doing anything to mitigate climate change? But nonetheless, we're trying, and all we can hope is that we just keep avoiding these catastrophic storms, and we can continue to make maple syrup into the future.